Everybody messes up at work sometimes, and hearing your boss yell, "You had one job," is probably a lot more common than you'd think. There are the small mistakes that we can easily get away with, but then there are the big mistakes that just can't go unnoticed. In those moments, all you can do is apologize, hope for the best, and try to save face. So join us for today's video as we take a look at 15 of the biggest mistakes employees have made at work. Number 15. Mistaken identity. Everybody loves a great celebrity interview, and when a local news station manages to land a star on their program, it's always a big deal. An interviewer containing their excitement is one thing, but they also need to make sure they brush up on their interview subject a bit first. Otherwise, the results can be quite embarrassing, and one KTLA reporter named Sam Rubin found out the hard way in 2014. Samuel Jackson was the subject here, and everything was going mostly okay until Rubin started asking him about movies and commercials that he had never appeared in. It turns out that Sam Rubin thought he was sitting down with none other than Lawrence Fishburne, a completely different actor. Jackson handles this situation as well as he could, but the mistake was already made, and the fact that he had to tell Rubin who he actually was made matters even worse. This was a big mistake made on the job, not just by Rubin, but his producers as well, whose job typically involves making sure everyone gets all the facts straight. Rubin quickly apologized, but that didn't stop Samuel Jackson from having a little more fun at his expense, all while still on the air. Number 14. Asiana 214 pilots. Asiana Flight 214 was a commercial passenger airliner originating from South Korea en route to San Francisco that crashed during its final approach. The event was certainly a tragic one, and when something like this happens, it's obviously going to make headlines. And when one local news channel, KTVU, reported the crash to viewers, they made a pretty big mistake. The news anchor began by reading the names of the pilots off of their teleprompter, but people at home quickly realized that not only were some of the names completely wrong, but they were also completely racist. There are plenty of people out there who won't be forgetting this mistake anytime soon. And to make matters worse, the anchor had stated that the names of the pilots were in fact confirmed by the National Transportation Safety Board, and they didn't even notice what they were saying while rattling off the slurs. It's likely that someone behind the scenes went ahead and replaced the actual names with epithets, but if you're the one reading them out loud on live television, it's your big mistake. The channel quickly apologized for what they referred to as the error, but it was definitely not a good look. Number 13. Slime eel spill. Cargo trucks have become a natural part of life at this point, and it's tough not to see a truck hauling goods when you hit the highway. And unfortunately, the more trucks you've got on the road, the higher the chance of something going wrong. And that's exactly what happened in July of 2017, when a highway in Oregon fell victim to a few hundred Pacific hagfish, better known as slime eels. More than 13 containers of these nasty little eels were being transported by a flatbed truck on the crazy and oftentimes crowded US Highway 101 when the driver noticed a construction zone a little too late. He slammed on the brakes to avoid a serious collision. All of the containers slid off the bed of the truck, but one of the containers hit a car coming in the opposite direction. The incident caused a 4-car pileup, but also left the highway covered in more than 7,500 pounds of eels. And they're called slime eels for a reason. They didn't leave behind an easy-to-clean little puddle, but a gross, thick, viscous liquid that isn't coming out of anyone's clothes anytime soon. Number 12. Ashlee Simpson on SNL.
On a Monday.
Saturday Night Live, or SNL, is a staple of not only comedy, but New York City. So when an artist is asked to be a musical guest on the show, it's a pretty big deal. Ashlee Simpson's career was on the up and up, so when she landed the gig on SNL in 2004, people were pretty excited. But the thing about live television is there's no room for mistakes, and Ashlee made a big one. Simpson and her band went on to perform her big hit, Pieces of Me. But when the music started playing, no one in the band was doing anything. Everyone could hear Simpson's vocals, but she clearly wasn't singing. She wasn't even holding the microphone to her mouth. To make this snafu even worse, she started dancing, making for one of the most awkward moments in live television history. She quickly ran off the stage, probably to save face, but her band began playing the song for real this time. No one really knows who actually made the mistake for sure, but again, the buck has to stop with someone. Number 11. Tesla Cybertruck Unveiling. The CEO of Tesla and famed billionaire bad boy is an incredibly polarizing figure, but love him or hate him, there's no denying the technology innovations his companies have made in the last decade. So when he was set to unveil Tesla's latest and greatest toy, the Cybertruck, people were excited. The yet unreleased Cybertruck is supposed to be as close to a street-legal, futuristic military vehicle a civilian can drive, and Musk wanted to show that off at the event. He started out by showing how durable the vehicle is by smashing it with a sledgehammer, or at least trying to. The Cybertruck was able to withstand the extreme bludgeoning in front of the crowd, so for his next trick, Musk chucked a steel ball at the Cybertruck's window at point-blank range, and much to everyone's surprise, the steel ball not only cracked the window, but it lodged itself right in there. So he tried it again, but with the same result. The steel ball should have bounced right off the unharmed windows, but this is the big mistake that the world witnessed instead. Number 10. The Walkie-Talkie Tower. If you look at the building at 20 Fenchurch Street in London, you'll be impressed, but also probably left scratching your head. Perhaps better known as the Walkie-Talkie Tower, this incredibly top-heavy building was built with just one thing in mind: money, and lots of it. The building almost balloons at the top floor to maximize the floor space of the higher stories, which would allow the owners to charge even higher rents the further up you go. And although it is a complete eyesore in the London skyline, they actually built it shorter than they had originally planned. The mistake here lies in the building's design and architecture. It wasn't just the height that made the walkie-talkie a disaster, it was actually the shape of the windows. The building has a curved facade which reflected the light into such concentrated beams that they melted cars and started fires. Sunshade were placed over the glass on higher levels to reduce these insane heat beams. But if it's not one thing, then it's something else, because the shape of the building creates a mean wind tunnel directing powerful gusts of wind down on street level. The walkie-talkie may have sounded good on paper, but in the end, it was one giant engineering mistake. Number 9. Drunk Ship Captain. Everybody knows that you shouldn't drink and drive, but what about when you're driving a ship? Well, the same rules and laws apply as one ship captain found out. The captain of a Russian cargo ship has been drinking on the job and ended up taking the ship straight into the bi-level Gangwon Bridge in Busan, South Korea in 2019. All things considered, it was the captain's lucky day considering no one on board was harmed and the bridge had been closed down for repairs. And while it's not illegal to consume alcohol while on a ship, drinking while operating one is a big no-no. The ship had already been going in the complete opposite direction of its planned course, and by the time the authorities arrived on the scene, the captain's blood alcohol content was well over the legal limit. It was also reported that an hour before the big crash, this 6,000-ton Russian cargo ship also hit a moored cruise ship along the way, although colliding with the bridge made the bigger headlines, and rightly so. Number 8. Rena and the Bay of Plenty. The Rena is a 735-foot container ship that was the victim of human error back in October of 2011 in the New Zealand Bay of Plenty. The ship was traveling at a speed of around 17 knots on its way towards Tauranga, but if you know anything about the Bay of Plenty, you'll know that it's also home to the Astrolabe Reef, and ships and reefs do not mix. The Rena struck the reef and was stuck there for quite some time, like a few months. During that period, however, the Rena was exposed to the elements that quickly began to erode the boat, and she started to break apart. The situation quickly became an environmental issue, so the next order of business was getting the vessel out of there and saving the reef. Sailors did their best to salvage the Rena, but she eventually split in January of 2012. The only thing left to do then was to dismantle the wreck right there on the reef. The results were pretty rough. 220 tons of heavy fuel oil were released into the water and the reef. The Prime Minister of New Zealand deemed the wreck to be the worst maritime disaster in the country's history. All of this could have and should have been avoided if the Rena's second officer hadn't deviated from the course to meet their deadline. The change, of course, took the ship right over the reef, which no one knew was there until it was too late. Remember, slow and steady wins the race. Number 7. Northwest Airlines Flight 188. There were plenty of mistakes made that added up to the disaster that is Northwest Airlines Flight 188's. But the end of this story is certainly a bizarre one. In 2009, the aircraft left for a routine flight from San Diego, California to Minneapolis, Minnesota, but it never made it to its destination. So then what happened? Well, it was a mix of incorrect radio frequencies, miscommunication between the crew, too much radio chatter, and overall negligence. It was a disaster, to say the least. The pilots had simply stopped paying attention to their route and missed not just the airport, but the entire city of Minneapolis by more than 150 miles. Before anyone knew what was wrong, Northwest Airlines Flight 188 was flying over Winnipeg, Canada. They weren't even in the right country. Air traffic control on the ground had assumed the worst and was ready to scramble fighter jets until the pilots finally radioed in. The incident sparked an internal investigation, but the pilots gave the excuse that they weren't paying attention because they were checking their laptops. It's a very silly excuse for what could have been a dangerous situation. Number 6. Mistake in millions. No one wants to make a mistake at work when money is involved. But that's exactly what happened to a New York bank teller in 2008. Benjamin Lovell was checking his bank account one day, only to find that $5 million appeared in his account overnight. Knowing that there must have been a mistake, Lovell called the bank to clear it up, but they assured him that everything was fine and the money was most definitely his. If you say so. Now a multi-millionaire, Lovell went ahead and went on a $2 million shopping spree, buying all sorts of things like electronics, jewelry, and even made some big investments. But the money was never his to begin with. Both the bank and whoever he spoke to over the phone made a huge mistake. And Lovell made an even bigger one by spending the money that wasn't his. As it turns out, the bank teller confused this Benjamin A. Lovell with another Benjamin S. Lovell. Whoops. Police got involved, and they were only ever able to recover $500,000 out of the original $5 million, and Benjamin A. Lovell was sentenced to probation. Number 5. Fergie's National Anthem. Even the best singers in the world make some mistakes every now and then, but this one really takes the cake. The pop star Fergie was invited to sing the U.S. National Anthem for 2018's NBA All-Star Weekend, but she ended up giving the viewers one of the strangest renditions of the song probably of all time. There's no denying that Fergie is a great singer, so folks are still wondering what the hell happened that day. Everything from the tone down to the melody was off, and celebrities like Chance the Rapper and Jimmy Fallon and even some of the players could be seen doing their best to hold in their laughter. Naturally, the incident blew up on the internet, and she was the talk of the town for the next few days. Afterwards, Fergie went on to say that she was trying something new and taking a risk with her rendition. But hopefully, this is one mistake that vocalists everywhere will learn from. Number 4. Fake interpreter. Former president of South Africa and civil rights icon Nelson Mandela died in 2013, and his home country held a memorial service to honor the man and his deeds. During the memorial, there was an interpreter translating the service to sign language for all the hearing impaired at home. The folks who don't understand sign language didn't notice a thing, but those who did realized pretty quickly that this person was not an interpreter at all. He was moving his hands about, making gestures that translated to absolutely nothing. It was the sign language equivalent of gibberish. Now, whether or not this fake interpreter simply didn't have a grasp of either language is still up for debate. But either way, many people were up in arms and offended by the debacle. The national director of the Deaf Federation of South Africa went on to tell the Associated Press that the interpreter was in fact a fake, and that he was simply moving his hands around with no real meaning or intention. So then the real question becomes, how did this person find himself in the position in the first place? Somebody definitely made a huge mistake, but perhaps even wilder is the fact that this fake interpreter was able to maintain his confidence and composure throughout the entire event. Number 3. Guy Goma. In 2006, business studies graduate Guy Goma was waiting in the lobby of BBC News 24 for an interview for an IT position. Goma was finally called into the room, just not the one that he was expecting. Instead of sitting at an office desk with his potential boss, Goma sat down with news anchors in front of TV cameras, all of which were rolling. Someone had made a mix-up, and Guy Goma was now being interviewed on live television for BBC News 24. Apparently, the subject for that day was supposed to be a man named Guy Cooney, a technology expert. So when Mr. Goma, the potential hire for IT, walked in, the producers said it was in fact Guy Cooney. Goma obviously had no clue what was going on, but went along with the interview even if it wasn't the kind he was expecting. This simple mistake ended up making a pretty memorable and hilarious TV moment. Number 2. Bathroom break. The onset of COVID-19 in 2020 saw a lot of people working from home and meetings happening over the video conference platform Zoom. It was a huge adjustment. Many people were able to adapt to this new style of work, but the ones who didn't catch on so quickly ended up making some pretty big and often hilarious mistakes while at work. Some people turned themselves into cats, and some people had their kids walk into the frame, but one woman's work mistake put all of them to shame. One woman on a big conference video call needed to use the bathroom but forgot to turn off her camera. And not only that, but she brought her computer and her coworkers into the bathroom along with her. No one realized what was happening as she was moving through her home, but once she sat on her throne, the jig was up and the laughs ensued. Number 1. Break a leg. Being a rock star is a tough gig, and not everyone is cut out for it. There are a few of them, though, who are undoubtedly a cut above the rest. One of these rockers, easily, is Dave Grohl, frontman of the Foo Fighters and former drummer for Nirvana. While rocking out at a concert in Sweden in 2015, Dave Grohl gave a whole new meaning to the term break a leg while on stage. Grohl was strutting his stuff, riffing on his guitar and feeding off the energy of the crowd, so much so that he took a tumble off the edge of the stage. Well, it was more of a big fall than a tumble. When the frontman fell almost 8 feet to the ground, he tried standing up, only to fall back down again. This on-stage mistake ended in Grohl's leg being broken right in the middle of the show and therefore canceling it. Medics rushed to the scene and carried him out on a stretcher as fans cheered him on. But the show must go on, so the Foo Fighters kept playing while Grohl was being attended to backstage, and the frontman eventually came back out, his broken leg now wrapped, and finished the concert. Now that is a rock star. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.